Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. You know, winter is here. I've dimmed the lights a little bit and come into the back room here where there's a lot of dust and pulp and strange tomes and volumes and books piled high. And I wanted to do today kind of a basic episode with the topic being who are the greatest pulp heroes of all time. So I've decided to do that as an introduction for those of you unfamiliar with the pulp era. There may be many of you. For those of you that are already familiar with the pulp era, I'm not going to say anything you don't already know. I'm not going to offer any vibrant insight into the pulp characters and pulp fiction. You already know this. This is really an introductory thing for those of you who have inquired of me about pulp fiction. What does it mean? When you say the phrase pulp fiction, most people are thinking about Quentin Tarantino and his really fantastic movie. But the pulp fiction era in literature, of course, was predominantly the 20s, 30s, 40s, and into the 50s, with the 30s and 40s generally being considered the golden age. So I've gone through my collection, and I'm going to tell you what I think are the top pulp heroes of the era. And I'm doing it with two criteria. First, historically, in order. I'll do it chronologically. And then I'm going to do it, secondly, by my preference. What do I think? You pulp fiction collectors and fans out there may have a completely different opinion. Perfectly acceptable. I get it. So this is just how I feel about it. And you can take it at face value or discard it or whatever you want to do. It makes no difference to me. I think that for those of you, one of the reasons I'm doing this, by the way, is because I've seen on the booktube channels, these so-called booktube channels, a lot of younger readers are discovering Tarzan for the first time. They're discovering Doc Savage, and I thought that's interesting, and it's kind of nice to see it happen. A lot of people, all of a sudden, thanks to Michael K. Vaughan and his June on the Range, which is the only booktuber trend that I really admire. Thank you, Michael K. Vaughan, for creating that. People are reading Louis L'Amour. Okay, so this is great. We have a new generation of readers coming out. So anyways, without any further ado, let's talk about my choices that are historically important in my preferences for the top pulp fiction heroes of all time. And up first is Tarzan. Tarzan, created by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I've shown this edition before. I'll have a scan coming up. This is the current edition from the Edgar Rice. I see there's a shadow on my face. Ooh, there's a current edition from the Edgar Rice Burroughs family. You can buy this online. They reprinted all of them with fantastic cover artwork by Joe Jusko. And these editions feature academic, rare material, handwritten drafts, and some of the original cover art and illustrations and so forth that went into the creation of Tarzan. I think this is one of the greatest series. Edgar Rice Burroughs is one of my favorites. After this, of course, we have John Carter of Mars, we have Carson of Venus, we have all sorts of things that Edgar Rice Burroughs. I think the Tarzan series takes off with the second book. For those of you that haven't looked at Tarzan too closely, The Return of Tarzan features Princess La and her gold collection, which you can almost feel Burroughs in his imagination just blossomed. And it took off from there, and he never looked back. Edgar Rice Burroughs, there are so many people, writers that I've talked to, Philip Jose Farmer, Ray Bradbury, they all talked about the influence that Edgar Rice Burroughs had on the world of imaginative fiction. It is profound. It is very profound. It is extremely masculine. With some segments of the audience, that masculinity is not welcome. That's your issue, not mine. I think Edgar Rice Burroughs is one of the all-time greats. Read the Tarzan series, and I guarantee you, when you get to the second volume, The Return of Tarzan, the world changes. Everything his imagination is just incredible. Tarzan first appeared in the October 1912 issue of All Story magazine. All right, so Tarzan's number one. Number two I'm going to put down the Shadow. Now, for the Shadow, I have the Bantam paperbacks from the late 60s. Bantam paperbacks started reprinting Pulp Fiction, primarily the Shadow and Doc Savage. Doc Savage is coming up soon. And I'm going to have an episode about the Shadow, separate from all of this. I'm going to have an episode about Doc Savage, and I'm going to have an episode about the Spider. The other characters I'm mentioning here I've either covered before, or I don't see any need to cover them again. I'll talk more about that in a minute. All right, so the Shadow was originally a radio show. Detective Story Hour, July 1930, the Shadow first appears. And The Living Shadow, the novel, appeared in the magazine form in April 1st of 1931, attributed to Maxwell Grant, who was really Walter B. Gibson. I'll have an episode about the Shadow to cover that. I consider the Shadow number 2. And number 3 is The Man of Bronze, Doc Savage. You can't see it, but I have a Doc Savage poster up on the wall up here. And it says, The Arch Enemy of Evil, Doc Savage. Doc Savage, under the pen name of Kenneth Robeson. There were several authors that wrote Doc Savage. Again, the 1960s reprints from Bantam really brought more attention to these old pulp magazine stories, and it's been an industry since then. All right, thank you, Bantam Books. I'm going to be talking about the Bantam Doc Savages and the Will Murray Doc Savages and the cover art by James Bama, and the model, and all of that in a episode coming up soon. Doc Savage is number 3. And who is number 4? I have number 4 is the Phantom Detective. Or is it Conan? Let me double check that here. Conan 32. And yeah, I'm sorry, Conan. Conan the Barbarian has to be number 4. This is the Ballantine Books reprint of the first few Conan the Barbarian stories. I'm sorry that I have that light over there and it's throwing a shadow on me. I apologize. Ballantine Books put out a whole slew of reprints. There are many other reprints, the Robert E. Howard Foundation. I am not going to be doing a Conan or Robert E. Howard episode currently, with the exception of one special volume that I have that I'll be talking about separately. But I'm not going to be doing coverage of Conan in general. I have everything over there, and you name it. All of the originals. I have all of the other authors. You name it. If it's come out, I have it. Robert E. Howard is a force to be reckoned with. I consider him one of the all-time greats. In a very early episode on this channel, I talked about replacing in high school. My idea would be to replace Death of a Salesman in high school with The Queen of the Black Coast by Robert E. Howard. If you're interested in getting young readers to read, and if you're interested in getting them involved in creative writing, all of you teachers out there, Death of a Salesman is a downer. It's a boring, sad, depressing book. Not to take away from its literary importance, it has that, but Robert E. Howard is far more vibrant, far more exciting. Put Robert E. Howard in the classroom, and all of a sudden you have created or helped create readers and future writers. Just my opinion. But again, I'm not going to be covering Robert E. Howard and Conan or any of it, because there are so many booktubers that constantly cover Robert E. Howard. I'm not going to be repeating everything they're doing. They're doing a great job with it. It's, I subscribe to a lot of booktube channels, and they're all covering Robert E. Howard. It's constant. I have nothing further to say than what I just said. Read him. The Phantom Detective appeared in February of 1933. He was written by multiple authors, and he was the second hero after the Shadow. And this is a facsimile reprint from, who did this? Was this Sanctum Books? Yeah, this was Sanctum Books, who also reprinted Doc Savage and the Shadow, and the stuff is fantastic. So, The Emperor of Death is the first one, and these are just fantastic facsimile reprints. These are now, Sanctum Books put out a lot of stuff. And, the Shadow, Doc Savage, and others. And those are now becoming collector's items. The prices on this stuff has gone way up. But the Phantom Detective is one of my favorites. I think he was great. Again, Norman Daniels and Lawrence Donovan, two writers that worked on the Phantom Detective. And after the Phantom Detective, I chose one of the all-time greats, The Spider. The Spider from October of 1933. This is a reprint you can find on Amazon of The Spider. I have tons of these, and I have tons in my wish list. I'm a huge Spider fan. I will be covering The Spider in his own episode, and I will be talking about Will Murray's Spider novels as well. He currently just released a new one within a month or two of this, and I don't have that yet, but I will be covering all of them and more in a future episode of McNulty's Book Corral. The Spider. I love The Spider. The Spider. Norville Page, by the way, under the name Grant Stockbridge. If you're unfamiliar with Norville Page, check into that episode when I post it, because Norville Page is without a doubt one of the all-time great writers of adventure fiction. Now it gets really interesting, and this is where people differ from me. I am including Superman. This is obviously a reprint of the first Superman comic. Superman originally appeared in Action Comics number 1, 1938, and soon had his own title. I'm not going to be doing any special episodes as of yet about Superman. I've covered Superman. I have a Superman tab on whatever that thing is called. Whatever. You have tabs and topics you can look up on my channel. Superman has his own topic. And I cover Superman now and again. I'm not going to go into it further. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. I consider Superman one of the greatest. Superman, the story lends itself to Doc Savage a little bit, with the Fortress of Solitude, and there are certain elements. But overall, Superman was really an original science fiction tale, and it's fantastic. It doesn't need any revision. So I consider Superman one of the top pulp heroes of all time. And I'm going to end it with another comic book character. This is where I differ from pulp collectors. Comic books are pulp. Just because it's a comic book, sequential art, doesn't mean that it shouldn't be included in your list of pulp fiction historical moments with The Shadow and Doc Savage and all of that. And that brings us to the final one, 1940, Captain America. This is actually a facsimile of number 2, Captain America by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. I consider Captain America equal to all of these characters that I have mentioned. Captain America is an absolutely vital comic. I love the Marvel movies, by the way. For those of you wondering, I think they're stunning. So as far as the Golden Age classics, there is a box set here put out that looks like this, and it has 2 volumes of the Captain America. The first Captain America Golden Age comic books are reprinted here. I would love to see all of it done up to 100. Captain America appeared in numerous other comic books in the 1940s. During World War II, Captain America is an incredibly important character in the world of pulp fiction. And of course, in modern times, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee brought Captain America back. And of course, you are familiar with the Marvel movies, which Chris Evans played Captain America to perfection. I'm a huge fan of those Marvel films. These are my choices for the top pulp fiction heroes of all time. Your list may be slightly different. That's okay. You'll notice, however, that there are some characters missing, and there were many more. One in particular, you're probably scratching your head going, wait a minute, where's Batman? I don't consider Batman that original. Batman is a composite character made up of Doc Savage, the Shadow, the Spider, the Phantom Detective, and a character I didn't cover called the Black Bat. You can find Black Bat reprints, by the way, on Amazon. Because Batman is really a composite character, there's less originality involved in the creation of Batman. That doesn't mean Batman's not a good character. I have boxes of Batman comic books. I even have Golden Age comics. I think I've shown 1 or 2 of those. And the popularity of Batman right now as a comic book, which I don't read, I refuse to buy it because I stopped because for years it was just a horrible comic. I've talked about my discontentment with DC Comics in other episodes. Batman is far more popular even than Superman. The way he's depicted now is horrible. I don't care for the comics, and but the original comics are good. I wouldn't historically list the Batman as equal in importance to the characters I just talked about. So there is that influence that stretches through all of Pulp Fiction, and there are many, many other characters, but this is just the lowdown. You can put together yours and include Batman if you wish. Most people, quite frankly, include Batman as historically important. He is historically important because of his popularity, but for a few other reasons. Again, a composite character with less originality involved than these other characters. Okay, so out of them all, some of these characters are going to live forever. They already have proven that. It's a done deal. So coming up, the Spider, the Shadow, Doc Savage. I will have 3 separate episodes about them, because I think they warrant their own episodes. I'm not going to readdress the issues with these. I just wanted to get that out there. For those of you interested in exploring and researching the era of Pulp Fiction adventure stories in the classic pulp magazines, so named because the paper was cheap pulp paper. And that's it for this episode. A little quick rundown. I hope some of you found it interesting. Stay well, stay happy, feed your brain, read a book.